everybody. Welcome to the Port Like a Pro webinar. We're just going to wait a few moments to make sure that everyone can get in. While we're waiting though, we just want to go over the current promotion we have going for porting. If you haven't heard, we have a free ANZ geographic porting promotion going on until December 31st. So any Cat A and Cat C Australian ports and any simple and complex New Zealand ports that are booked before December 31st with no reschedules are free. Doesn't apply to inbound, mobile or international. If you've got any confusion around it, just reach out to your account manager, but it's a really, really good deal, really good way to end the year and start off the new year, getting your customers across. So we're really keen to bring that to you. Probably just wait a little bit more, make sure everybody's in. Hopefully everybody found their way in easy enough. This is the second porting webinar that we've done. The first one, what was the name of the first one? Porting 101, yes. I believe.
Yeah.
That one was just a very basic cover of everything. So we've taken the feedback that we received from that webinar. You guys wanted more detail. You wanted more time spent on things. So for this webinar, we will be doing a lot more in-depth of all those topics that we covered last time. So I'm going to get started. I'll go on through. Here it is. Port Like a Pro, Strategies for Success with Access 4. Our previous webinar, if you did miss it, it is available on YouTube, so you can jump in there and check it. And once this one's complete, we'll also make this available on YouTube too. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, we really encourage you to pop them into the question and answer section at the bottom of the screen. Should be there in the Zoom area. Anything that pops in the chat, we may not see it, so please do put questions through in that question area. If your question isn't answered during this session, don't worry about it. We'll get back to you afterwards. So in case you haven't met us all, my name is Alex. I'm the Knowledge Base Manager here at Access 4. We have Emily with me here, Senior Porting Coordinator, and Connor, another Porting Coordinator. Today, we will be going over how to submit a porting order, how to get an update on your porting order. We know that this is a big thing that a lot of people have a problem with in terms of your customer wants to know what's going on. You want to know what's going on. You want to give them that information as quickly as possible. We want to show you how to get that information as quickly as possible. How to order new numbers and, of course, port outs. There will be time for questions at the end. So to start us off, I will be passing over to Emily to talk about submitting an order.
So in this section, we'll be going over on how to submit a standard porting order. The two things that we do 100% require is validating documents. So we do require an invoice from the last 90 days and also a porting authority form, which can also be known as a PAF or CA, also from the last 90 days. So what we're looking for on the invoice is the account name and address, the billing issue date. We don't look at the billing period date as that doesn't align with when the bill came through, and the account number. Yep, so sometimes we understand not all carriers itemize the numbers on the invoice. However, if there is a situation that it is itemized on the invoice, you can look to see to identify complex services. In this case, most common ones is message bank, DOT, and NBN. Those will automatically create a complex port. And porting authority form. So this is just where you would get your customer to sign it saying, hey, they've given you authorization to port this number. And this is how you would make sure that all the information aligns. So the losing provider has to be whoever is billing you. The account the account number has to match what's on the invoice. And same with the address and account name. And if the number is itemized, you can include it here as well. However, it's always recommended that the bids are always itemized on the porting authority form. And here we'll just go through a quick live demo. Yep, so there are two ways that you can submit a porting order. There's one in the customer section and one in DID numbers. In this case, we'll go from DID numbers to porting orders. And then here is where essentially you'd see every single one of your customers' porting orders, past and present, and we'll just click on create new porting request. So here you would select the customer. In this case, we'll just go for a test. The primary contact will automatically be filled out for whoever is submitting the porting request. However, you can edit that if you wish for someone else to be the primary contact. And secondary contact is an optional field if you require someone else to get updates as well. So go porting type. So this is where you would find what you're trying to port. So if you're going AU, you would go for Australian. If you're looking for NZ, this is where you'd select it. So in this case, we'll go for Australian, and it will provide you 3 different porting types: standard, mobile, and inbound. And in this case, we'll just go for a standard geo number. Here, the account name would have to be what is said on the invoice. Existing provider will have to be whoever is billing. So in this case, we'll just use Telstra as a dummy. And the account number has to be what is matched in the invoice. However, if there is a typo, we will have to reject it because we can't edit that field once the port has been submitted. Here is where you would have to add your mandatory invoice from the last 90 days. And that, yep. And here we got a customer authority form. So this is where you would add your PAF or porting authority form. Please note, it also has to be from the last 90 days. And it has to be given to us within 2 business days of the request. We understand sometimes there can be a bit of delays. Just please let us know if there has been a delay on getting it. So here is where you can add just an internal note for yourself. So the customer has a Melbourne and Sydney address site, and you're just trying to port the Sydney numbers. So you can add a little reference note just for yourself internally to say it's the Sydney store. In importing the customer's address. So this is, we'll pull from whatever is on the customer's link to the customer's account. You can change it if the invoice, if you're porting a Melbourne number, you can add their Melbourne store. And if you can't, Here is when you'll select the porting type. So if it's a single, if it's a 10 range or 100 range, please note that anything more than 5 DIDs is automatically a complex port due to ACMA regulations. But in this case, we'll just go for direct and dial 1. We'll just add a single number. Yep. And this is where you would identify on the invoice if it had a message bank or NBN or Optus loop. And let's say this number did have that, so we would select yes to make it a complex port. Next, we have a little EBD section. So this is when you're setting up an EBD on the customer for the customer. This, if you do pending, we have 60 days for it to sit in pending order acceptance. It will get auto submitted after 60 days. We do send you a 1-week notice before, just letting you know, hey, make sure everything's all set up. We are about to submit it in a week, along with just a weekly reminder from our API, just, hey, it's an EBD pending. If you have one already set up, you can select yes, or if you don't require one, it hasn't been set up, you can just select no. In this case, we'll just go with no. Okay, importing the numbers. So you can add your numbers earlier if you wish to start setting up the customer earlier. If you have forgotten to click this box, you can let us know on the ticket and we will import it. But note that we won't import numbers if the invoice is out of date. However, once the order is marked on verified, when we'll go over the statuses later, it will auto import the numbers into your reseller account. And if you need a specific booking date, you can select that here. And if you don't require a time, we will just pick an AM slot. So we'll just go for the 31st of December. But if you do require a specific time, you'll just have to click that little checkbox and select the time from here. Just note that there is the time zone conversion. So if you do select 9 AM, or it's you're in Queensland, you select 8 AM, it will show us as 9 AM. But if you required it for 8 AM, just let us know, because our carriers are Melbourne and Sydney based. So they will be following the Melbourne and Sydney time zone. However, if you don't require a specific date and you just need it to come over ASAP, you can just select the little box here, just ASAP. And we'll go review and submit. This is essentially going over everything that you've already added. So just going through your customer, the porting type, just confirming that all the account details are correct. The numbers you're porting is correct. And here you can add a little note saying, hey, this is a high priority customer. Or if you only need it on a specific day, like let's say you only can port it on a Wednesday or a Thursday, you can add that note here, and we'll add a note internally for us. So when it's ready for booking, we'll tell our carriers, hey, only book it for these 2 days. And we'll just select this little box. This is just telling you guys that you've given us authority to port your numbers, and we can make the executive decision on where it starts going to. And from here, we'll just click submit. And we'll be going over the statuses now. So I'll be handing it over to Alex.
Thank you. So once you've submitted an order, you will be automatically taken to the customers page of whoever you've made that order for. So you can see here that I'm in a test enterprise. That's the customer name. I'm under the DIDS tab. And when I scroll down here, we can see that port that I've just created. So there are a few ports here. We can see where's the one that I just made? This one. This one I just made? Yep. Yes. There we go. So this is what it'll look like when you've just made a porting order. If you haven't looked in SASBOSS before, you'll see at the top, we have all of these statuses here. So all the way through to completed. When you jump in here, you can see things like the exact status your order is at, what that means. You can see what date and time that you've requested for, including the time zone. So if you're ever unsure, you can go in here and double check. All of the selections that you made, you can see your account manager. So for me, that's just our internal guy. And you will be able to see, once it's assigned to somebody, you'll see who in the porting team is handling your order. You can double check that reference, double check who submitted it, change any of the information necessary, like the account name or the address if asked by the team. And you'll find all the information here. The most important information will be here in this order log. So I'll go into another example here of a booked ticket. So you'll see here, it's gone all the way to the booked stage. You can see that it is booked. You can see that I have the option to reschedule if necessary. You can see that Connor is the one handling this one. And when I go down the bottom to that order log, you're able to see time-stamped the most recent update that you've been given. So I know that the cutover has been booked. It was booked on the 13th of the 11th at 3 p.m. and it was booked for the date and time that I requested. This is the fastest way to get an update for your porting order if you want to know where it's at right now. Jumping into SASBOSS and having a look at it will give you time-stamped the most recent update. If for whatever reason you jump in and it doesn't have an update, you were expecting one, or maybe you weren't, but your customer is asking you for one, the fastest way to get an update is actually right here. So if you go to actions, you can go to add comments. This will let you add a comment directly to the ticket the same way it would if you responded to the email. So I could be like, hi, Connor. Where are we at with this ticket? Not going to write the full thing in, but I would respond to him and say, hi, Connor, my customer is wondering, when is this going to be done? Or my customer would like to do a reschedule. How much will it cost? Anything like that, you can pass that through to the team. And if it's within the business day, the team's going to get back to you. They're always in there checking these and making sure that they're up to date. So they'll get onto it. As long as it's not after hours, you're most likely going to get a response within the same day. Of course, if it is something urgent, we do ask that you call, so we make sure that we can handle it straight away. We understand that a lot of porting is very time sensitive. Now we'll just jump back into the webinar and I'll hand it back to Emily.
Cool. Thank you. So this is what happens. So sometimes you'll get from us these weird rejections. So if we go from multiple carriers, just go to the next slide, please. So we've got one with multiple carriers. So when we get a porting order, we can actually see who the tier 1 carrier is on porting orders. So sometimes we can see Optus and Telstra on the same ticket. However, due to ACMA regulations, we can't submit them in the same porting order anymore. So we will let you know, hey, this ticket is proceeding with the Optus numbers. Please raise a new porting order with the Telstra numbers. Sometimes in the PMV, we'll get multiple sites. So although they're all on the same invoice, they might be up the road from each other. They're not exactly on the same, they're not linked to the same address. We will let you know, because if it does come to rescheduling and stuff, there could be multiple fees involved, different area codes. So this is also when you, before you submit a porting order, you can't submit New South Wales and Queensland in the same area, sorry, in the same ticket. They have to be in two separate porting orders. Same with the multiple carriers one. It's just due to ACMA regulations and us being unable to submit multiple area codes in the same ticket. Yep. So sometimes we have seen situations where customers, where a tier 1 carrier or whoever is billing you has split the range across multiple customers. We can only port the numbers that are associated to that customer. Yep. However, if they're still coming back as, no, they're part of the same range, even though it's part of the same different customers, you can ask your current carrier to split the range or disassociate, which just refers to telling the tier 1 carrier or whoever your current provider is, hey, make sure these numbers are separated. We don't need them to port together as they're part of different customers. Yep. Just noting that Access 4 do not split number ranges, nor do we disassociate numbers. During the porting order, the customer or whoever, or yourselves, if you have authorization on the account, will have to do the split for you. And we'll pass over to Connor, who will teach you about ordering new numbers.
Yeah, thanks, Em. So you can actually order numbers for your customers directly via SASBOSS. We have a new number ordering tool available for you guys to use. It's been around for a while, but we thought we'd do a little run through on how to use it. So there's two different ways you can order it. You can order it directly from the customer. So we're already in the test enterprise account here. So if we scroll down beyond that, yep, here we go. We can actually click on request new DID numbers. And this will pre-fill some of the details for you. So if you're in the customer's account, it will automatically select the customer. You can choose the group. And as well, you can also import the address from the customer too if you click that box. Important thing to note here, though, is that the numbering order form uses the address and gives you numbers from that area. So if you're looking for New South Wales numbers, use New South Wales address. However, if you need Queensland numbers, for example, for this customer, but have a New South Wales address entered into this form, it's only going to give you New South Wales numbers and not Queensland numbers. So you need to make sure that whatever address you put in or what area region you put in is where you want the numbers from. It's very important you do that. Otherwise, you might get incorrect numbers when you do it. The other way to get into this order form is also through your reseller inventory as well. So on the left-hand side, if you go to DID numbers and an inventory, this will show you your entire inventory as a partner. And here you can also request new DID numbers. Now, the reason why you might want to do this is because potentially you want to order some new numbers and prep these new numbers ready for a customer, but they don't quite have their account set up yet. They don't have the configuration all figured out or the groups figured out yet. So you can actually purchase these numbers to your inventory instead, and then allocate it to the customer later on in case if you need to do that. So here, we'll just do it from our inventory as an example. And you can also import the address from your reseller account. But again, be careful where it's based and what area that's choosing it from. In this instance, we might just do it manually. So we'll choose the country here. So this is where you can specify if you want Australian or New Zealand. So you would choose whichever one you want. Here, we'll go Australian quickly for this one. And you can just type in the address. Now, normally, after you type it in, it will kind of give you some options to choose from. So maybe here we'll just go 658 Church Street, which is just Access 4's office. And then it should take a second to load and give you a few options to choose from. Yep, and you can just choose the option there. If for any reason it's not coming up correctly or giving you the right options to choose from, you can click on the Can't Find Your Address button, and that will let you manually input the details yourself. It's good to troubleshoot it in case it's not working correctly. The other important thing to note here, though, is that potentially you might not have an address, right? So if your customer doesn't have an office based in, let's say, New South Wales yet, you can use just a random address in New South Wales for an area you want, such as maybe a Sydney postcode for a Sydney address. And the reason why you can do this is because whatever address you choose here isn't linked to the carrier PLNR records, which is what the carriers use for the numbers. It's purely just for our new ordering tool to know which numbers, what area you need for the new number pool basically to choose from. So you can actually use I say random, but you should use an address based in a postcode or area that you're looking after, but it won't affect the actual performance of the number or how that number is recorded on the carrier system at all. That's dependent on what you have set up in the customer account in SASBOSS, not on this tool. Something important to note there. And then you keep going. So with the number type, this is where you choose if you want like a standard DID for Australian, if you want inbound, or if you want a mobile. You can also choose other countries here, like international and so forth. Again, if you choose an international one, though, it might bug out with the country you chose before. So make sure you kind of have that same as the set options. If you're Australian number, choose a country and number type as Australian, and then choose standard here, for example, if you want a standard geographic DID. Next, you can choose the group size. So this is if you want an individual number, a block of 10, or a block of 100. Now, why would you ever want to do this? Well, sometimes ranges and blocks can actually be good for certain setup you've got with a customer. If, for example, a customer has asked for 20 numbers, and they need it for a specific service they've got. Maybe they've got a hunt group and they want to assign one number to every employee in their company or in their support team, let's say. If you choose a group size of, let's say 100, you can assign 20 of those numbers to different employees, and they'll be in a consecutive order in that customer. So it's easier to manage for you later on if you need to figure out which numbers aren't working or which numbers need to be activated and so forth in different services. You can go in and easily identify which number is on which employee, rather than ordering 20 individual numbers that have random patterns and everything. It also gives you better scalability for that customer. So let's say they need 20 numbers now, but they might need another 10 numbers in the future. You have an additional 70 numbers here if you order a 100 number block that you can then give to that customer for future use. So give them that future scalability that they might have. But please note that if you do order a block of 10 or a block of 100, you cannot split that range up later on or split it amongst different customers or different services, depending on the configuration. So what that means is if you order a 100 block and then you regret it and a week later you say, hey, we only want to keep, let's say 40 of these numbers, unfortunately, you need to keep that whole 100 block or cancel the entire thing and order new ones. We cannot split ranges. It's something that we don't offer. So make sure that when you choose a range, you 100% need that range for sure. Then you can go down to the quantity. So in essence, we'll just choose a single, sorry, for the group size. And here the quantity is how many you want of that group size. So if you put 3 here, it will give you 3 total single numbers. If you had it set as 10 or 100, you'd get 3 blocks of that size. Now, the total numbers will always reflect it in there on the right-hand side if you ever get a bit lost of how many numbers you're ordering. So it's a good way to make sure you're actually ordering the right amount of numbers you need. So here we'll just go 3 single numbers as just an option here as an example. And then you can choose a pattern for the numbers that you want. So this is really good if your customer has asked for, like, say, hey, we want these new numbers to end with 99, for example. You can choose it ends with pattern and then search up the numbers here with 99. You don't need to put in the area code or anything. That was automatically linked when it searches up, so you don't need to put that in. And here, for example, we've been given 3 numbers here to choose from. We can just click like select all, for example, if you want all 3 of those, and it will automatically reserve those numbers for you. Important to note here, though, that you might not get numbers depending on your pattern that you've searched up. So this is based off our carrier's number pools that's available to choose from. If you choose a very obscure pattern, you might not find any numbers there. Now, you can submit a support ticket to our team who will manually look into it more if you definitely know the numbers should be available. But if you can't find numbers that you're looking for, our recommendation is always just to try and loosen that pattern up a little bit, maybe not make it as restricted. Try maybe with starts with or contains instead of ends with if you need to. But otherwise, always try less restrictive patterns if you can, because you'll have a better chance at finding numbers. And sometimes we just don't have numbers available for certain patterns, and that's important to know. And if you submit a ticket to our team, we'll check that on our side with the carrier records as well to make sure that's the case or not. So here we'll just choose select all for 3 numbers. You'll see the reservation period underneath it. So it's roughly around about a 7-hour period that you have these numbers reserved under your account. And the key thing to note here is that these numbers are reserved under your SASBOSS login. So let's say you found these 3 numbers, you reserved them, you've closed your laptop, and then later in the afternoon, your colleague calls you and says, hey, a customer wants those numbers like now. If they go to search up those same numbers in the new ordering tool, they're not going to find them because they're linked to your account and they're reserved under your login. So you need to make sure that you're the person who goes in and looks for those numbers in the ordering form, because otherwise your other colleagues and so forth won't be able to find these numbers. And unfortunately, there's no way to actually end its expiry earlier. So you either have to wait till that expiry period is up before someone else can search them up in your company, or you can just go back in and search them up and then you can basically purchase those numbers. Then you'll choose the product type. So this is where you might have certain different products for different billing for different customers. And this is just where you would choose that product billing to apply to these numbers. So most of the time you should only have maybe a single product, but you might have multiple products. So make sure you choose the right one to avoid billing issues later on for that customer. Next here, this is similar to what Em went through with submitting a porting order. You can just put in some internal notes for your team and for yourself as well as to why you ordered these numbers. The order reference will be stored against the order purchase details, and then the comments will actually be stored against the number itself in SASBOSS. So maybe you might put in the purpose of the numbers in the comments. So that way, if your colleague looks at it later on, they understand, okay, these numbers are bought for the Sydney store for this customer, and they're meant to be used for a hunt group. It helps you kind of just keep the records clear for both yourself and your team. So that way it can get action faster for whatever actions need to be done with these numbers and avoids confusion overall. So here we'll just put like, webinar test numbers as an example. If for any reason you need help and you submit the ticket, to our team, you can click on this button down here, and this will come up with like a little pop-up that says, you can send a ticket to us, or you can even give us a call as well on our helpline if you need immediate help, as you can see there. We try to get back to these tickets within 2 business hours at the very latest. Sometimes it can take longer, but we try to respond within the same day at the very least. Our team will look into it. We'll see whether or not maybe it's a testing tool issue or whether or not the pattern's an issue or even there's maybe no numbers available, as I said before. But either way, if you urgently need help, definitely always call us. It's better to call than to send a ticket through. But sometimes we do need that written ticket as well anyways. It's good to do both maybe. Send a written ticket and also call us up as well. And you'll be able to buy those numbers and they'll be literally assigned into your account straight away in your inventory or the customer if you chose from the customer account. And you'll be ready to use them, ready to put them on services and get a customer up and running straight away. So it's a really handy way to get a customer going on Access 4 immediately. We'll quickly go through New Zealand as well while we're here because it's relatively a similar process. The only thing is that with Australian, you can buy numbers straight away and have them in your account, where with New Zealand, it's all done via a manual ticket system to our team since it uses a slightly different carrier process. But the process is relatively the same. So you choose New Zealand as a country, the address you put in, whatever area you need. This is very important to do correctly though. So if you need an Auckland number, please use an Auckland address. If you need maybe something for Hamilton, use a Hamilton address. This is because our team, when we see the request, we'll look at the address for where you want the number for. So make sure you put the right address in there. It's very crucial. Then you can choose the number type. So you can choose whether or not you want an ITFS for New Zealand or whether or not you want a standard DDI. So here we'll just choose a standard number. And again, you can choose a single, 10 or 100 range. We'll just choose a single for this one. Then you put in the quantity. So whether or not you need just one single number or you might need 3 again, or you might need 5, whoever knows. And then you can choose the pattern as well. So here you won't be able to search up any numbers with this pattern, but it will send to our team to say, hey, can I please have numbers that have this number pattern included or start with this sort of number pattern after the area code. Again, if you need any sort of patterns or anything, please make sure you put it in here. As our team will base our actions often on the number request ticket system, what you put here. So make sure you very clearly explain what numbers you want for what area and what pattern if you do need it, because otherwise we might action number request and might not fulfill the needs that you need. So here, Alex just put reference and also saying, can we please have 3 consecutive numbers? If you didn't put that there, we might just give you 3 random numbers. So make sure that if you need anything like that, you put it in the comments for our team to see. And then you'll see a submit request instead of a buy DD numbers. As I said before, New Zealand numbers, we don't have linked to this tool yet. Just send a manual request to our team who we then action. Again, we try to get it done within at least 2 to 4 business hours, depending on the complexity of the request. But we always try to make sure we respond back at least the same day saying we're looking at this request, we're reviewing it and so forth. But again, it just depends. If you have a really complex new number request, it might take longer. If it's a very just simple 2 numbers, no number patterns for the Auckland area, we get done within pretty quickly within 2 to 4 business hours at the very minimum. And yeah, that's ordering your numbers in SASBOSS. I hope this helps you guys sort of understand how to use the tool better. It's a very handy tool to use, and I recommend you definitely look into it if you haven't. Maybe don't actually buy numbers or order anything yet, but just sort of muck around and see what you can search up in the tool as well. It's handy.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that messing around with that tool, especially with the pattern searching, can be really interesting, seeing what is available and just what you can do in there. It's actually quite impressive. Moving on, we'll be talking about port outs. So if you've been with us for a little while, you've most likely had to action a port out before. If you're don't even know what I'm talking about, a port out is the opposite of a port in. So everything that we've been talking about up until now has been bringing numbers onto your platform, onto us and onto your account. A port out is the opposite. It is numbers leaving your account. So a customer has decided for whatever reason that they're going to change. So this is a similar process to a port in that it has the same validation stages that one does. It's just that you're on the opposite side of it. So the end customer contacts their new provider contacts their carrier, that carrier contacts their carrier, that carrier contacts our carrier, who contacts us, and we contact you so that you can contact that end customer. So it's really roundabout, but it's just about authority and making sure that that end customer's request is valid and it's not someone just trying to snatch their numbers. So it looks really complex, but realistically, you only have to worry about that little end bit between us and your end customer. So what happens is a port out notice is received by us. We will double check those numbers in the system. We'll see who they belong to, and we'll contact you to let you know that we have received a port out request from your customer. You then contact your customer to validate that, whether or not it's authentic. You let us know whether it's authentic or not. If it is authentic, we will pass that on. The port out will continue and we'll just notify you once it's been completed. When it has been completed, you will then remove the numbers from whatever service or services that they are on, deallocate them from the group and let us know. And then we remove those numbers from your account and all billing will cease immediately. So mostly it's just about us sending you actions and you performing them quite quickly. There are required details. So if your customer comes to you and says, I'm choosing to leave, I need some details off of you, this is what you're expected to provide. It's the same things that we expect to be provided when a number is coming in. So a copy of that latest invoice within the last 90 days with all of that account information visible. If for whatever reason you don't have an invoice available, maybe you only do an invoice once a year or some other reason there's just not one around, written confirmation from you counts. It's the same as an invoice. So as long as it is an email or a PDF that has your official letterhead and it says these numbers, which are the numbers that are to be ported out, belong to this account name and number, we will accept that as valid proof. If for whatever reason your customer does not have an account number, I'm aware that some of our SASBOSS generated invoices may not actually say the account number on them. You can use the customer ID that's in SASBOSS. So that's on the left-hand side, you go to customers, all customers, you search up that customer, and on the left-hand side of the table, there'll be an ID section. So whatever ID is next to them, that can be in the place of an account number. When you do receive a port out, there is an option to reject it. So this can only be one of these specified rejection reasons. These are specified by the ACMA as valid rejection reasons. So complex service, disconnected or pending disconnection, incorrect account details, missing associated numbers, or numbers located in multiple sites. You'll find these are quite familiar because they're most likely rejections that you'll have seen when you're trying to move numbers in. Obviously, not all rejections can apply to every porting type. So you'll see in the next slide here, any rejection can apply to a Cat A port out. The complex service rejection can't apply to a Cat C because it already is complex. And inbound port outs can only be rejected for incorrect account details. None of the other ones apply. It's also worth mentioning that the complex service and, missing associated numbers rejections, when you respond to them and you say, oh, this one's actually complex, or, oh, there are missing numbers, here's what they are, that is also considered a form of acceptance or authorization, where you have said, oh, the only issue with it is that it's meant to be complex. That is taken as implied consent and it will proceed as a Cat C order. Same with the missing associated numbers. If it's going to proceed, it will simply go on with those added numbers put in. They won't let us know if it's going to be cancelled or not. That's something you would have to check with your end customer, not something that we are privy to. In terms of how long a port out takes, the validation period is quite short and quite strict. So the ACMA has recently made some changes to try to make it faster for everybody in the industry, moving numbers around. And part of that is bringing this validation time down as short as possible. So on average, it's going to be 1 business day. That's how long that you are going to have to respond to these port out notifications. We will specify in the port out notice how long you have. There will be an explicit date and time that you will need to respond by, but on average, it's going to be 1 business day. This is why it's really important that the provisioning group contact in SASBOSS is up to date in your account, because that is the contact that these are going to be sent to. They are legal notices and they do need to be replied to. The provisioning group contact email needs to be a group email monitored by at least 2 people to make sure that nothing is missed. If you don't have a provisioning group contact email, our porting team will do their best to get in contact with the right people. They will email people that are tagged as provisioning in SASBOSS. If they can't get in contact with any of them, they will find the head of whatever partner that you are. They will find the head of your company that they can and notify them, or they will notify your account manager to reach out to you. But these really are time sensitive and we need responses. It's also worth noting port outs do not stop on public holidays. They will continue. So even in the upcoming holiday period, port outs continue to go on in the background. In terms of completion, this is a very broad topic. We are not notified of when the port out has been booked. We are only told once it has been completed. So all we can say is that the standard for a Cat A simple or inbound port is within 30 days, and the standard for a Cat C complex port is within 120 days. We are not able to influence this in any way. If the customer is coming to you and asking why it's not done yet or what's going on with it, and we've already done our validation, it's moved on, there's nothing that we or you are able to help them with. They're going to have to go talk to their new provider. And that's that for this. We're now on to our Q&A. So we'll just have a look and see if we've got any questions in the chat at the moment.
Yeah, so Amor's asked, will you notify us if a number needs to be disassociated from a range? So we definitely will always notify you on the ticket for that port as well, especially if something comes up with that tick port. Let's say you're trying to port a single number and it's come back with maybe a couple other numbers associated. Maybe let's say like there's a total of 5 numbers that the carrier says we need to port. You'll have like 3 options here. You can either port and keep them across. So you can either include them in the port and then keep them on our platform and use them if they're needed. You can port and cancel. So you can port them across to us at Access4 and then submit a cancellation request for any numbers you don't need, or we'll ask you to dissociate. So we'll always let you know if there's any issues in the validation, such as the PV validation period. If a number comes back with associated DIDs or has extra ranges and so forth, we'll let you know and say, look, if you want to associate, it's something that you guys need to organize with the customer and the existing provider to sort out. And you just have to let us know once it's done. So we'll always keep you informed throughout the entire validation process. And if there's any issues with disassociating, or having to do that with the losing carrier/provider, we'll let you know. But unfortunately, it's something that the customer needs to organize with the provider, and you guys have to let us know once it's done. We can't do it for you. We can provide assistance on what you can say to them and give you templates on what you can say to the provider to ask for it, but we can't have it action on your behalf, unfortunately, by Access4 staff members.
I also see someone here said, what about during embargo? If that's in reference to port outs, yes, they do actually continue during the embargo period. That is something we have skeleton staff on for that reason, because we do continue to receive them and we do legally have to continue sending them out to you. So yes, that is something that will be ongoing during the embargo period.
So they just said no holidays for me, sad face.
I'm sorry. If it helps, there's no holidays for Emily either. So we're all in this together. Anything, has anyone, any other questions have come through?
Is there a way to refresh the reserved numbers in the ordering numbers process?
So you've got numbers that you've got reserved, but you don't want those. You want different ones to come up instead. The fastest way to do that, frankly, is to mess with that patterns section again. So if you've got something reserved, you don't like the look of it, you'd rather change to something else, opening up that pattern section, going to contains and dropping in a few numbers will generally change the results that you're about to get. Sometimes also changing the address a little bit can do that. As long as it's still within that area that you're looking for, that can sort of refresh as such, but those numbers will still be reserved and they're not going to be released again until that end date. It doesn't affect you in any way, really. It's just something to keep in mind. That's just to make sure that you're not trying to buy something. You're not trying to buy something, and while you're doing that, someone else jumps in and snatches them off you. We want to make sure that everyone gets a fair whack before someone else jumps in.
Yeah. Someone else just asked, Amor's asked as well, how far in the process can we still cancel a port in request? Did you want to?
So we can cancel the port in request at any time. However, once it's booked for like a couple hours, it's booked for a couple of hours and you're like, I want to cancel the port. We don't cancel it then. You'll have to wait till the port is complete and do an emergency reversal if the customer no longer wants to proceed. But anytime before 48 hours to 24 hours, you can cancel the port in your request.
Yeah.
It's important to note that there is cancellation fees that do apply to the port as well if you do cancel it. So it's not free, unfortunately. And as well, if you go to cancel the port within 24 to 48 hours of the cutover, so let's say 2 days before it, there could be emergency cancellation fees that also apply. There are a bit more than your standard fee. So in general, we recommend once it gets within that 24 to 48 hour period, if you do need to reschedule or cancel the port, reach out to a team. We'll let you know how much it's going to cost you if you do want to proceed with that, and we'll have to get your acceptance in writing and so forth. But you can cancel any point during the validation, or if you submit a tick by accident with wrong details, you can let us know and we can get you to resubmit it straight away and cancel it on your behalf.
As always, it's best as soon as you know that you can't go ahead with it for whatever reason, it's best to let the team know straight away.
Yeah, important to note that if you do try to cancel a port within validation periods, sometimes there can be a 1 to 2 business day sort of wait period for our carriers to fully withdraw it before you can resubmit it again. So it can sometimes take a couple of days for our carriers to fully withdraw the port before you can resubmit it, or have it fully withdrawn for your peace of mind, I suppose.
If you do try to cancel and the cancellation's already in progress, and the customers change their mind and they want to proceed with porting, we're going to have to proceed with cancelling the request. It's going to have to go through, and then we're going to have to close our porting order, and you're going to have to create a new one. We can't stop it once the cancellation process has begun.
Yep. So Michael just asked, I might have missed it. For the porting requests, if the invoice doesn't have the client's account number for a reason like the current provider doesn't issue account numbers, what do we put in there?
That's a good one. So I have seen it before where an invoice has come in and it doesn't actually have an account number. In these instances, it is best to get the end customer, if they can, to reach out to their current provider and double check. Just be like, whatever account manager they have at the time. Hi team, can you please confirm with us our account details? That's the easiest way. I understand that for a lot of the carriers that we're working with, though, that's not the fastest way. So it depends on what that carrier is going to accept, because they're going to get the same notice that we get. So they're going to get like a port out notice. If the information that's on their notice doesn't match what's in their account, they can legally reject it. So it needs to be what they have on their end. If you don't know, then we need the customer to get in contact with them and find out. Otherwise, we can attempt to submit it with just the account name and use the account name as the account number if they don't provide one. But you just need to be aware and let the customer be aware that there is a chance that it will get rejected on those grounds, because technically the account information may not be correct.
Yeah, I think with that, if they don't have the account number listed on the invoice, there is another like an invoice reference that you can supply as well, based off the invoice. But like Alex said, we can't confirm it will pass validation. The best way to check is with the current provider and just ask them. That's the best way to make sure there's no issues going forward. But like we do with SASBOSS, so we have the customer ID in SASBOSS. The existing provider might have a similar setup on their side that you have to use a certain ID number to get a port validated and approved. So yeah.
And possibly if they have an account login of some kind, if they have some sort of website or account that they can get into, their account information may be listed there. So if they have an admin on their account, they can possibly jump in and get it themselves, which might be a little faster than going through a carrier.
And also, so you
And the other thing that we can use is the invoice number, but once again, they might reject it because it doesn't match what they have on their records. But an invoice number can sometimes be a valid account number.
And also let us know too in the comments that you might not have an account number, just so we're aware and we can raise it with the carrier in case it is an issue. Just let us know. Let the team know in the comments when you're raising the port request and say, hey team, they don't have an account number. We've used this for now. Just please make sure that that's sort of something we're aware of, and we'll keep that in mind when we're dealing with the carrier and validation and stuff.
A heads up is always appreciated. If you know that they've had a recent change to their account or a recent address move or any sort of complication, it's always better to just let the team know so they can keep an eye out for it.
Okay, so somebody else has asked, if someone has just purchased another business and wants to port a number from them, but the invoices aren't in their name, is there any way around this?
I don't want to say there's a way around it. That sounds a little dodge. But in terms of they've just legally acquired the business, they should have a contract of sale of the business that has all their information on it. So they can supply that as well. But again, we're talking about carriers that are just going to have information in their system. If the information doesn't match, they're just going to flat out say no, or their API will just say no. So it's going to be whatever they have on their end. If it's just been acquired and that customer is able to contact whatever carrier that previous business was using and take ownership of the account, then they should have no issues at all. If it turns into a problem of who owns the account and who has the right to use it, that turns into more of a legal issue between them of when they completed the sale, were these included in the sale or were they not? So that one's a bit more complex. If you're currently dealing with that, and that's something like, this isn't just a hypothetical, this is a for real, just email the team, porting@access4.com, and we'll get back to you with more specific advice, because that one's a bit sticky.
Yeah, it's very dependent on the situation, I guess. And we'll do our best to sort of talk you through what's required going forward when you're submitting the port. And if the port has already been submitted and we're running into issues, we'll communicate exactly to you what the current situation is of our carrier and what the other carrier is saying, and we can sort of work through it together. We're here to support you guys, and we're here to make it as easy as possible for you. So we try to do the heavy lifting where we can. But having that supply documentation as much as you can of maybe assigned paths or emails from the existing provider of, the account details are correct, helps our lives a lot more when dealing with the carriers. So anything you can get that shows authorization on the account and sort of backs up that the customer owns these numbers and so forth helps us out tremendously.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And if it does occur and you've let us know beforehand, we can tell our carrier if it's gotten rejected, we can tell them like, hey, this is a situation. Can we please try and do something? Sometimes they might help us, sometimes they won't. It's really dependent on what the carriers are feeling in the moment, if they want to be helpful or not.
It is case by case, but often having that written confirmation is particularly good, especially with larger carriers like Telstra and Optus. A lot of the time internally, they won't speak to each other, their teams. So your customer will be hitting a brick wall on one team because that information isn't getting passed from one team to the next. So often having an email or anything like that we can send off that explicitly says this person from Telstra has given this information will get you places much, much faster than sitting on the phone with them for 4 hours. All right. I think that looks like all the questions so far. We'll just leave that open for another moment to let anyone get last minute ones in. While we're doing that, I will just remind everybody of the embargo dates, as we mentioned before. So embargo is from the 19th of December to the 7th of January. There will be no ports booked on any of these days. If you do have a port that is in the system at the time, it may or may not have any progress. So if you have a PNV, it may progress through this, but if it is with a carrier that has a lot of manual processes, it may not progress. So this is sort of not a time that you can rely on anything getting done. As we mentioned, port outs will continue during this time. We will have staff on to be looking at that. We will also have TAC staff on, skeleton staff to support you guys. Yeah, please ensure that provisioning inbox is monitored, even if it's just to forward emails into another inbox, just so you guys have visibility over it. We just don't want anything to get missed and anyone to get blindsided. But otherwise, I hope everyone gets their porting in and done before December 18th. It'd be really exciting. We love to see it come through, and we hope you take advantage of that free porting offer we have going on. I don't see any other questions. If you do have any more questions, you can shoot them through porting@access4.com. The team will always get on and help you. Oh, we just had one.
Just one quick one. It says, is there a way to check what the provisioning email is?
Yeah, through SASBOSS. There is. I'm just wondering, I don't think I can show it when I do it.
Let's have a look.
But you go into your reseller. So if you go into SASBOSS, go into the left-hand side, you'll see reseller. I believe you go into that, go onto the right-hand side where the 3 dots are, and it will open up a drop-down menu. And in that, it should have provisioning group contact listed as one of the options. When you click on that, it'll open up and it'll show you what that is and what it's been set to. So that should be where it is, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
If you need help with that after as well, we can probably pop a video together or make a small article or something just so that everyone knows where to find it. But yeah, it'll just be under your reseller information.
Another important thing of that too is that if we go to send a port out notice to your team and we notice you don't have a provisioning group contact set up, we will email you in that port out email saying, hey, we noticed that you don't have one set up. Please, can you set up one up? And we'll give you kind of instructions if you need on how to do that as well. So we'll let you know if it's not set up correctly. If you do have something set in that box, though, we won't necessarily tell you that you don't, hey, you don't have it because it might be correct. So if you don't have anything, we'll let you know. But otherwise, it is something you should be actively checking and changing if you need to, because it's very critical to get that updated. And it also is used for port in updates as well. So any port in updates will use the primary and secondary contact on the ticket, but also that provisioning group contact will also be included on updates for porting tickets. So it's good. It's both really handy for port ins and port out updates regularly. So your team's across everything.
Yeah, and if you don't have it set up, we will still at least send it to 2 people who have the either provision or support tag next to their name. So it is going to at least more than one person.
No worries. All right. I think that's probably all the time that we have anyway. Thank you all for coming. We're so happy that we were able to get such a big turnout. Again, if you have any questions, just let the team know. They're always here, always happy to help. And we hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.